fought with several of the people that were in that film, side by side, not fighting them, but us fighting others. Monica Roberts was one in particular. And what comes to mind, one of the things that changed the trajectory of my life and of my ministry was when I became a bishop in 2008. I was one of the first women bishops in my denomination. And we went through hell because we were blindsided by gender, because all of us were like black church kids, kind of, you know, and so my background was Baptist and Church of God in Christ, and many of us were had been groomed and had our formation in conservative Christian environments. And so when that hit us, and it was with people that I knew loved me, I had to ask myself the question, well, where are my blind spots? Because I had to assume I had them. You know, we think we're all progressive and we got it all together until you really sit down and have really intense and intentional conversations. And when I looked around and kind of swept my world, I realized even though I had trans folk as ushers, as leaders in the ministry, all that was true. However, I could not tell you one thing about many of their personal lives. I could tell you that, wow, you really looked amazing when you came to church today. Or, wow, that's so great, I see you have a new friend. But it was all things within the confines of the building. And I then did a walk where I literally talked to every trans and gender nonconforming in my congregation. And it was, even till this day, the most sobering experience I've ever had, in the sense that I had people sharing truths with me that they had not shared before for fear of telling me, of all people, in my mind, right? Like, how do you not tell me? And you don't tell me because there was enough of me that was still the kind of more traditional, but beyond that, the church had done so many of them so wrong that by that time there was no trust for any of us, really. And that led to a range of other acts on my part that really I had to, number one, own that truth. You know, at this age and stage, my birthday was just last Monday. At this age and stage, if I'm going to spend time anywhere, I want to tell the whole truth, okay? And that's part of the truth. Part of the truth is that as faith leaders, even progressive faith leaders, I want to suggest, particularly sometime progressive faith leaders, because we'll run the risk of not understanding, we too also need to continually grow. And that work ultimately led to a range of activities. Cameron will be carrying much of that out as we go into the future, as I'm retiring on the 30th of this month from the Freedom Center after 17 years of doing this kind of work. The little girl, lastly, was it for me too, First G. And the reason might be a little different. She moved me because she learned at 4 that she's going to have to fight for her life. But the gift is that she doesn't have to do it by herself. And so I'll stop there. She was the one for me. And that experience I shared in terms of testimonial was what brought me to this work and will always have me standing up for my trans siblings.
Absolutely, thank you. And we also have Sarah Castleman with us. Sarah is on the HRC North Carolina Board of Governors and also helped found the Parents for Equality group in HRC North Carolina. Sarah, you know, if you want to say a little bit more about yourself and also, again, one of the moments from the film that stuck with you.
Sure. Yeah, I have a lot to say. I think for me personally, I am not affiliated with the church, so I'm different from the rest of the panelists because I was very triggered by this film. Because of religious trauma growing up queer in the 80s and 90s, zero representation, what I was told living, you know, I really resonated with hiding who I was for a really, really long time and feeling like something was wrong with me, and then being told by the church, by society, that I'm an abomination, basically, and that 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 was part of mine. So it was triggering, but also knowing I'm not the only one that experienced that. And also Esther, which I love that she changed her name to that. I think we all, in this space and the advocacy work that we do, we want trans kids to become trans adults. I mean, plain and simple. And the fact, like you said, I mean, at 4 years old, realizing the fight that she has. And one of my famous lines I say when I speak is, I'm not worried about my kids. I know they have a supportive family. I also have 4 children. I'm worried about the kids that don't have Sarah as a mom, or these mama bears. You know, not everybody's lucky enough to have them in their lives. So that's to help.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And again, for the work you do, not just for your kids, like you said, but for kids all across the state. You've been on the front lines of a lot of these political fights that were echoed in the show. Bishop Rawls and Minister Terrence, I was also raised in a Pentecostal background. My mom did not attend my wedding, right? But I've had supportive systems, and I've had mama bears in my life, even if they didn't call themselves that, step up for me. But I remember one of the folks in this film talked about being down at the altar, crying and praying for this piece of me to be gone over and over, being anointed with oil, going to church camp over the summer. Maybe this will be the time it finally clicks. In those moments, when I was doubting and feeling alone, there were a couple of scriptures and what I felt like the Spirit moving me that I could cling to. And they mentioned one of them here, of the vision to Paul, don't call unclean what God has made clean. And so for both of you in your work, I wonder, are there scriptures or moments or moves of the Spirit that have stuck with you as you have encountered hate or your own internal doubt or moved in these? So I don't know which one of you wants to take that first, but yeah.
So I have a couple of scriptures that I live by. One being coming from the book of Job, where he talks about, though he slay me, yet will I still trust in him. My favorite book of the Bible is 2 Corinthians, the 4th chapter. And it tells us, you know, even though we're destroyed and perplexed and beat down daily, while our outer man is growing tired, our inner man is being rebirthed. And Pastor preached on this Sunday about the broken vessel, right? And so I've never encountered hatred that was right in my face, or homophobia that was right in my face. My situation came not from me being gay, it came from me marrying a man from within my own family. And so I understand, because my mother was not at my wedding, and I didn't want her to be at my wedding. And I basically told her that she was only invited because of my spouse and my sister. Other than that, I didn't want her to be a part. So I grew up in the church. I am a church boy through and through. And so it was not crazy that I ended up marrying a pastor and came right over to St. Luke and fit right in. And one of the things about being at St. Luke is because people already knew me from a little boy, because they knew my family. And so I think that helped me to integrate over here. And so I, in my mind, I'm always thinking that I was made in the image of God, and if I'm made in the image of God, then God knew exactly who I was going to be, and he knew exactly what I was going to be. And then I also take pride in saying that God came that I might have life, and that I may have life more abundantly. And I really live by that as well. And so that's a little bit of my story. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, absolutely. I think, too, you know, for me, it's always been, the burden of proof is on people who want to exclude, right? God has called and called and called people in. The prophets and Jesus called people in. Tell me who you don't like, I'm going to call them in. And the burden of proof is not on us, on who we include and invite, and it's on who's going to exclude. Bishop Rawls, you know, at the founding of the Freedom Center, one of the first programs was called Do No Harm. And I wonder, too, as you talk about your own journey too, about that messaging of, listen, I ain't, asking you to get all the way there or change your mind today, but just do no harm. Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, I was that girl that almost got married. Mine was almost hallelujah. I would have been the worst. It would have been so bad. Oh my God. And then I think they thought I was like being groomed to be like a first lady. I would be such a horrible first lady. They just don't have any idea. But I did almost get married in my 20s, my late 20s. And this was after I had already been with a woman. And my story was not one where I grew up thinking I was gay my whole life. I was totally straight in terms of my engagements, let's just say. However, I fell in love with a woman, and it just started with love for me. I didn't have a title for it. It was just this woman and I, both of us, our first experience, loved each other. That said, however, that was growing at the same time my vocational life was growing. I lived in LA at the time and went to, so at that time it would have been considered a mega church. I'll leave the name out because I want to I want to be able to tell the truth. But, and so they knew that there was an anointing on my life. However, there was no path for a young evangelist. That the furthest we could go was evangelist missionary in the Church of God in Christ. I still don't think that they're ordaining women yet. But you have to understand, feeling this strong pull and this strong call, but then being told that it's relegated to this particular box. I know that the women who were in the prayer room, I was linked to the prayer room. So, every morning before work, 6 a.m., I'm in morning prayer, and I worked in advertising at the time. So if you can imagine going from prayer over to Century City, Los Angeles, to be a marketing executive. So my life has always had that tension in it. What I found in terms of scriptures, I became celibate for 7 years, actually, because I did not believe God could possibly use me as a same-gender loving person. There was no scripture that supported it, and I just said, well, God, you're just going to have to change me. I'm amazed I still have hair from the amount of oil that was put on my head and laying on of hands. And then I did say yes to someone who was 25 years my senior. I made way more money than him at the time, and he was a delivered pedophile. I know. And the church celebrated it because he was like a number 3 or 4 executive, and at that time, more than 10,000 member Church of God in Christ congregation. After saying yes, though, God and I had a really hard conversation. First time I ever had one like it or since. But the bottom line was, God let me know I didn't make a mistake, Tanya, when I created you just as you are, number one. Number two, if you choose to marry him, I'm going to bless you. If you choose not to marry him, I'm going to bless you because you're my daughter and I want the best for you. And then lastly, I will ultimately use who you are authentically for my glory. Now imagine God saying something like that to you, right? Like to your glory. Well, as time goes forward, I realized God didn't make a mistake. And as soon as God told me he didn't make a mistake, I went, or God's self didn't make a mistake, I immediately went and broke up the engagement that I just said yes to. And then beyond that, there was always a place in me. This ties to your question, Cameron. When you've had to go through something like that, it transforms you. It really, really does. And in that place of transformation, one has to be willing to say, I accept this mantle. I'll accept this, right? The mama bear, she had to accept that mantle. The 2 scriptures that have inspired me most, because there's many, but first I want to say, Paul is not Jesus. Can I just say that for the record? Okay. Paul was a complicated man with a lot of problems. Paul was empire. He was Roman. There were things about him that is important to understand that. My first scripture is, though, Genesis 5:2. And it's the creation story that doesn't get told a lot, and you'll know why when I tell you the scripture. Because what it does is it tells the genealogy of Jesus, right? And normally people like to run over those things where it's and begat and begat and begon and begat, all of that stuff, right? Well, this one was important because it starts off saying where Jesus came from. And what it opens with is, in the beginning, created he them. Come on, somebody. We do serve a triune God, you know, right? Not a binary male-female God. We serve a triune God with three parts. Created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. So, no, God didn't create Adam and Eve. God created Adam. And that started a whole thing for me in terms of gender and God. And then the second one for me is, it was troubling at first until I grew to understand it. And that was Hebrews, the 11th chapter. And it was this passage that talks about all of these amazing faith things that people of faith and belief did. The problem was, it says, but they all died not having received the promise. And I was just thinking about all of my LGBTQ siblings who had passed on and the like, trans in particular, because I don't know a trans person who has not attempted suicide. And I know a lot of trans people. I don't know one who has not either thought about it or attempted it. And that's a big statement over years of the work we've been doing. But that idea that I could work, fight, struggle, and not get the promise, it just didn't seem to be aligned until you read a little further. The next verse says, and part of why that happened is because they with us, that's perfection. That basically they live a life big enough so that somebody else has to finish that life. The only reason Kai could do what she's doing and the way she's doing it is because of the whole long line of other trans and gender nonconforming people that went before her. And then as Kai's 4-year understanding combines with the work of Monica Roberts, of Miss Major, of all of these other women who couldn't even imagine having that kind of support, that's the flex. And that's why I'm so excited about the work the Freedom Center has done and is continuing to do. And that's the work I think God's calling us now all to do, and that is find that place that we can plant, we can be. And if it starts with just a hug or a little walk like the monks did, you know, that little tiny walk they did, right? It's just, sometimes it's just one simple yes. And so I'll stop there.
Thank you. As someone who has also argued with God quite a few times, I used to joke that my favorite times to go pray to God were during a loud thunderstorm, so I could go yell as loud as I needed to, back and forth. One of the things that we hear from the mama bears in this film is about the power of their hugs. And we also have talked several times in the film and in this conversation about suicide prevention. That the one biggest indicator of a child's resilience, of how much they'll succeed in life, and also to reduce suicide is to have just one trusted adult in their life that they can confide to, that believes in them, that is safe for them, that one trusted adult. That goes even higher for LGBTQ kids because they have extra systemic challenges happening to them, there are extra attacks on them. And so it is the one biggest indicator of a child's resilience and success. It's the one most powerful way to reduce the risk of suicidal ideation in our youth is to have one trusted adult, and that's doubly so for queer youth. You know, Sarah, one of the things I've been very proud of the work you've done with Parents for Equality is that, yes, you're going to Raleigh and DC and talking to any legislator who will listen, but you also have been doing book readings and community gatherings. Can you talk more about what inspired you to do Parents for Equality and step up and take even more of a role?
Yeah, so I didn't really give background. I've been with HRC in some capacity for about 17 years, and the last 4 running it. I'm not gonna not say that's what I'm doing. But yes, being a mom of 4, and I think just for me, like, I just go back to my story of not having a community growing up and just not knowing that HRC or any org for that matter existed, and I wish that I did, just to have a safe space community, something to feel like I was not alone. So I think that's why I do what I do. And then having children, just it's hard enough to be a kid in this world, just figuring yourself out, but then you add sexuality or gender identity onto it, and it's just so much more complicated and just hard. And you have not just local but federal government telling these children that they should not exist. And then the last few years, you guys all know that that's the one main thing that they're using on their platforms to be elected into office is targeting children. Why are we doing this? And so I think for me, I know what I needed as a child, as a queer kid. I want to representation matters, right? I want you to see that I am in society. I have a family, whatever that looks like for you, but to see that we can exist in the world and it's okay, And so yes, when I fight, wherever I am, it's just sharing your story. Your story is the most important thing that you have. It took me a long time to be able to sit here and not cry. I'm a crier. Not saying that probably won't happen at some point today, but I don't apologize for it anymore. When I'm sitting across from a straight, cis, normally white man, wherever in the Capitol, and they're just looking at me like, why are you here? I don't really care about you. I'm going to vote because I don't think that you should exist, and I'm crying and telling my story. I want them to remember the woman that sat in their office and cried, and then the next time you're trying to take my rights away. It's that kind of stuff. But for the kids, I think for me, I just want them to know that they are not alone, that there are people out there that are fighting for them, and these mama bears are amazing. And yeah, the kids just need to know that they're not alone. It's my biggest thing.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll get to some of the political fights and the things going on in just a moment, but I do want to kind of drill down on family connection and belonging right now. In the film, and if you're a queer person, you probably understand the concept of a chosen family, right? Your bio family that you're born with, that you did not get to pick, for better or for worse. And then also your chosen family, that queer people are experts at building other networks of support and connections. And one of the tragedies of this bigotry that's been ingrained in some of our faith institutions is that for a lot of people, their chosen family, their first chosen family, can often be grown from their church. And that when you come out as queer, or as you struggle with queer, you lose that link too. And so I know that here at St. Luke's and with many of the programs at the Freedom Center and with Parents for Equality, there are ways that you are building connections in family. And so I want to know if you want to talk any more about how you've been building family or how you found your own family in your spaces. That's really for all of you, whoever wants to take it first.
Well, I'm going on an amazing vacation in about 12 hours with the most handsome 11-year-old, my grandson. So we're taking our first kind of big vacation for several days. I say that because I'm his grandmother very intentionally. Before he was even born, before his older brother was born, their moms decided the family structure that would work best for them and for us. I have great-grands too, by the way, and have never bore a child physically, but I cannot imagine how much more love I could have for my children, grands, and great-grands now. I say that because I remember this one day I was speaking in Raleigh for, I can't remember whether it was bathroom or it might have been marriage equality. And I brought a picture of my wife with me. Normally I'm on these platforms by myself, but I felt it was really important to bring her picture because I wanted people to see my family and not just hear me talk about my family. And what I celebrate, first, when you were telling me about the Chad, I think you were talking about the number of youth in your ministry, in the young people ministry. You cannot minimize how powerful the families are that we create. You cannot. And unless people are within our community or really closely adjacent, it's a concept that for some is very difficult to imagine. I have siblings who have birth children, and this one day, one of my sisters said, well, you wouldn't know because you're not a mother anyway. And that's a very common thought, right? Until you talk to my grandkids, until you talk to my children, until you talk to my great-grands. I remember when the very child that I'm going with, Jediah, to the beach tomorrow, this kid teased him when he was about in kindergarten and said to him, it's something wrong with you and it's something wrong with your family because you have two moms and you're supposed to have a mom and a dad. And so he says, he reminds me a lot of little Kai. He said, you only have one mom? I have two. And I got two grandmothers. In addition to my other grandmothers, in fact, one of my grandmothers is a whole bishop. And he left the other kid feeling bad that they had less than he had, okay? Because it's all about these ways that not only they're able to own family, but they stand on it. And that's important because if we don't understand that, there is a saying that someone white told me, actually, and what they said was, I told my children, if you ever get lost or in trouble, go find a black woman. If you ever get lost or in trouble, find a black woman. Well, what is it about us? Do you know what it is about black women? We've never been safe within family since we've been in the Americas. And what we understood was, because our children were given away, that we're everybody's mama. When I grew up, let me tell you something, every black adult around me had permission to kick my behind, given by my parents. And listen, if she cut up, just, take on over there to the side. Because we could trust that the community cared for us. So I do want to say that, more and more, it'll be great to trust women more. Because I think we're going to be the answer for helping to heal this world. And that's nothing against brothers. And when I'm saying women, I'm talking about feminine energy. That feminine energy now is manifesting in ways that it has not in a very long time. And it is because of its healing nature. I'll say lastly, to confirm what I'm saying, how many female cops do you know who've killed somebody?
So,
You get to follow up.
And the importance of chosen family, she's not wrong. But again, if you want to talk more about how you're building family and connection, here at St. Luke's and in your own life.
I think, I know here at St. Luke, we come together as a community, as a family of love, and we welcome everybody, no matter what walk of life you're coming from. And we hold you dear to us, right? I have a chosen family. We decided to have a blended family. I'll start there. So I know I look 21, but I actually have 6 kids. And they range from 38, and then a set of twins, 31, and then you get down to the 13 and 11 and 10-year-old, and those are our chosen children because we adopted them out of foster care. And I always wanted a family. I always knew I wanted to be married. I just didn't know, growing up, didn't know how to make that happen without actually being with a woman. And that was never my desire. That was never where I saw myself. But I knew I wanted a home. I knew I wanted a dog. I knew I wanted the children. So I wanted all that. And then I met my spouse. And that began to resonate that, wow, this can really happen. And we got married in a time where we had to go to D.C. and not our local church. So kudos to y'all that are married yet and on your way. But we went to D.C. and we had friends and family there. And those friends and those family members that were there, they not just because some of them were biological family, right? But most of them were church friends and family friends. Those are your chosen friends, and your chosen family, excuse me. And I think about my friends that I have now that have become my chosen family, because a lot of my family has died off, right? So I have my mom and some other family members that I disassociate myself with just because of the level of disrespect, and I'm just not one that's going to put up with disrespect. Um, so it's very important to have chosen family and to give the hugs. And I have a child that wants to hug and kiss every 2 minutes, and I have to say, listen, let's take a hug break. Let's take a kiss break. And I'm sure when I get home today, he is waiting by the door to give me this hug, to give me this kiss, to ask me how it went and why he couldn't come. And so I love it, even though it aggravates me at times, but to understand that and to teach them, because they're not biologically connected, right? So I always tell everybody all the time, at any given time, I have 6 set of parents in my house, including the ones up me and Clifford, and so that's 8, right? And to teach them that this is your brother, this is your sister, and at the end of the day, this is all you're going to have. And you have to stick together, because when me and Daddy Clifford are gone, all you're going to have is each other. And so that's always important to me, and to get that through to them, because I also work with the state of North Carolina in child advocacy, and I see the foster children and that don't have family, and I see the teenagers, like I shared with Bishop Rawls, I see the teenagers as they get 16 and 17, and they've been in the system for a long time, right? And because in North Carolina, when you get age 12, you have to consent to being adopted. Well, a lot of those children don't want to be adopted because they feel like that if they get adopted, they're going to be losing their connection with their birth family. And what research has shown us is that no matter what walk of life they come from, they always want to be with their family. And so we have to respect that, but we also have a obligation to show them a different way and a different light, and to tell them, what if you look at it this way? And I do think that some children, my foster care children, are a little different, just because they feel that they're free, and so when they are coming out as trans, when they're coming out as gay, it does not affect them as much as it would if they were coming from family dynamics where they would be judged, because at this point, it's like I have no one to judge me, and I'm going to be able and free to do what I want to do. And then you have this whole team of people that are going to back for you and that are advocating for you to say, yes, be who you are, be who you want to be. And it does get tricky if they go back home, because now they found their voice, and then the parents are still like, well, this is my child, you're my child, this is, and so that gets tricky, and then it's just a snowball effect. But yes, so chosen family is very important. Thank you.
Okay, trying to think what to share. I guess my story is a little different. I am bi. I was married to a man for a really long time, had obviously 4 children. I think for me, that's part of I think the coming out is I wish I was one or the other. Being both is really, really hard. But also looking like I'm in a heteronormative marriage for so long, and you're not, you're having to try to prove your queerness. It's constantly just coming out every single day. It's exhausting. But now I just turned 50 2 weeks ago, and definitely at a place in my life where I am, this is authentic. There's no other way to live, and having kids see me live my true self, which they always have. They've always known we were a queer family, and my ex was supportive in that. But yeah, I think just having to go and fight with all the things that I fight with for my family, of like proving, it's a constantly proving of that. But luckily, my parents are amazing. I have a trans nephew, I have a queer niece. They didn't come out to my brother, they came out to me because they knew I I'm the safe person. I'm the safe place. So another thing of why representation matters of, my youngest is gender fluid, so he sees and is proud of mom and knows what I do. And I mean, we talk about bills at the dinner table. We're that family. My daughter came out as being as straight to me when she was in 7th grade. That's a true story, which is really funny. But yes, chosen family, 1,000%. Everyone that I have come out to and chosen to share that part of me, even when I wasn't out to the world, in college or whatever. It's so, so, so important, more so than I think for any other group.
Kim, if I
Absolutely.
could say something in reference to that too, the adults connected to this, and I learned this at a PFLAG meeting. I was speaking at PFLAG one day, and this was a PFLAG in South Carolina. And one mother said something to me that I had not thought about. And what she said was, what I had to own and my husband had to own was we were more afraid of what other people would think about our parenting than about the fact that our child was gay. And that we also had to go through our own coming out process. And it's interesting because we don't often think about what it means when the parent or grandparent or siblings also have to address this, and they do. And we don't tend to provide a lot of support for them in that process. And so I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge the importance of giving parents the opportunity to choose. So there was a couple, I was marrying, a male couple, convinced that the mothers were not going to show up. One mother, we knew she wasn't going to show up, but the other mother, the son was a mama's boy, like really, right? And it broke his heart that his mother was not going to come to his wedding. The day of the wedding, she showed up, fully dressed, beautifully dressed, and then was totally supportive. And what she said was, I had to own the fact that my son did exactly what I always taught him to do. I told him that nobody can tell you what you think, nobody can tell you what you feel, and nobody can tell you who to love. I had to stand on that word that I taught to my son. But had he not invited her in the first place, that opportunity would not have presented itself. So I wanted to just give that little shout out on the parents grappling, and you referenced the Do No Harm campaign. It was similar for pastors, where some of them were not nearly as homophobic as they presented. But if you've got kids, as you all were referencing, that are in college and all of these kind of things, it is not the simplest thing in that kind of way. So for them to just come out, there's things connected to it. And so I'll just say lastly that the gift of that was all of them agreeing, I never want to cause harm. And they got that, and then you work from there. And now many of them are some of our biggest advocates.
Yeah, I also just want to point out that we need to find the fountain of youth that our panelists are hiding from all of us this evening, hearing all of them talk about their lives and just, again, being joyful and living your full life ages you less. So you found it from this stage. I do want to pivot a little bit. We've talked, that guilt and shame piece, right? That's from faith that affects not just the queer person, but their family as well, right? And we see those pieces come out, so I'm glad to hear us talk about how we find chosen family, how we make space for others to also be safe, and to make space to question, to ask, to explore for each other is so important. We're kind of getting close to time, so I do want to ask just around the political piece of this, right? That yes, again, I feel like most folks in this room, especially if you attend this church, you know when it's time to vote. And that you probably are already voting. If you aren't, we're going to pray for you. We'll pull the oil out for that, okay? But there's so much more to building community and protecting our queer kids and building our things than just voting. You don't get to check a box one day a year and be done. I'm sorry. I wish the world worked that way, right? We all say that's the right thing on November 3rd. November 4th, it's all fixed. We can go home and live our lives and be great. But I do want to point out that each of you in your own ways are moving the needle, right? That is hopeless as things can seem, if you have your headline notifications and breaking news notifications on, it can seem that way. But I want you to know that there are wins happening every single day, all across our community and our country and our world for our folks. And so I want to know if you want to share something that's giving you hope in this moment or a win that you'd like to share. One of the things I want to share too is that, for example, in North Carolina, there have been so far 27 attempts in the past year to cut HIV funding for testing, prevention, and research. We have defeated all 27 attempts in North Carolina. Virginia cut their funding, Tennessee, South Carolina, everyone around us, but because of folks like Bishop Rawls and Sarah and so many of you who go up to Raleigh and talk to these legislators and share your stories, we are seeing wins. Our county commission has increased its funding for places like Time Out Youth in Charlotte Trans Health. There are wins happening, and there is more to this organizing work than just voting. And so, what's giving you hope in this moment? What are you finding a success or a win that you want to share? It can be explicitly political or just out in the community too. And Terrence, do you want to start with that one?
So I work for the state of North Carolina. I will not be talking about
that's fine. Absolutely,
politics at all. But what does give me hope is that when I look at my children and they are well-rounded and they love their friends, and when we show up at school, and it's funny because everybody at school knows that our children have two dads, and the teachers are like, who's coming? And they want us to always be a part, and they always are looking for us. And it's funny because I've been on 2 DC trips with 2 out of the 3 children, and I told Clifford, I'm like, I am retiring. I'm tired of DC, and this is your turn. So him and Moses will be going to DC this year, but I look at their friends, and then I think about their parents. And when we were in DC, I shared a room with one of my white colleagues and his son, and Joseph, and we were just talking, and we got into politics very vaguely, right? And he was just sharing his insight, and I was like, okay, I can see it, right? And I understood it. But to hear that, and then for him to reach out and want his son to come over for a sleepover this weekend was just, that's what gives me hope. That to know that this child has 2 dads, right? And that this is this child is Caucasian. We're black, obviously, right? We're blended. But to want to spend time and everybody's beating down our door to want to have sleepovers, and I thought I've never had a sleepover when I was growing up. But we have all these friends that want to come over for sleepovers, and we just had Moses' best friend stay with us for almost 2.5 weeks, and his mom entrusted us and to keep him because he wanted to finish out the school year. So, and I say all that to say is that when we give children a chance, because they're our future and they're our hope, when we give them a chance to be who they are, to ask questions, and we're not judging them for wanting to ask questions, and we're not spewing our bias and our hate onto them, the world can change. And so that's my look to the future and for my hope.
You give me hope, Cameron Pruitt. You do. When you found something, you're not always thinking about legacy, but legacy is in there. And I wasn't sure what it would look like when I transitioned out, and many of you all know my wife Gwendolyn passed 3 years ago. This November will be 3 years. And there was a lot I had to sort out. But among the things was knowing it was time for me to transition after 17 years. In doing that, though, it was an honor to follow you for the period of time that you were my executive director. we were very intentional about how I transitioned. So I've actually been transitioning for 18 months. I'm ready for this ship to just pull into dock, okay? But what made it such a joy was Blue and Cameron and Travis and the work that I know the organization will continue to do. That has given me tremendous hope. And lastly, I'm now also, and this has not been formally publicly stated, but you will be among the first to kind of hear it formally like this. So I'm chancellor of the Black Mountain School of Theology and Community. We just launched our Charlotte campus. We're going to be sharing space at Union Presbyterian Seminary. And it is an experimental seminary environment where we're training seminarians and community activists together, understanding that both not only are scholars, but also that both are essential in terms of how we all work together. The individuals we've been working with on that work, and again, I have to go back to thanking the Freedom Center because we launched this effort through the Freedom Center, is incredible. So we'll actually have 2 campuses in Richmond and in Charlotte, and that's exciting the heck out of me because we really will have an opportunity to do some amazing formation work for individuals that have to be equipped for the world in which we live today. And I love you.
I mean, I think a lot of things are giving me hope right now. I think we can all just get caught up in the negativity and all the bad stuff that we hear every day. And when you're in the fight that we are in every single day, there's days I don't want to get out of bed. It seems hopeless and all the bad stuff. But then our first Pride weekend that we worked was this past weekend, and Huntersville Pride had their 2nd annual, and it was really great for a small little town. And for me, just seeing the amount of parents that were there with their young children, and I mean like under 10, clearly their first Pride, dressed from head to toe in the most obnoxious rainbows, but it's just so awesome. The looks on their faces of just pure joy. I mean, if we all remember your first Pride, I stood in the middle of the street and just cried. Like I was just boo-hooing. And so just seeing, but it was just a lot of parents with young children, and I just thought, and they were dressed in their rainbows too, and that made me really, really happy, and the reminder that we need sometimes of why we keep doing this, why we keep waking up. And also, my youngest is just finished 6th grade, which is just awful. Middle school is still terrible. But he's found his little queer group in theater, shocker. But he had his performance like the last week of school, and I became this theater mom, which I think I was born to be. Who knew? I was a sports mom for a really long time, but I was in my element, and watching the obviously queer kids walk with such confidence and power and like just authenticity at 12 and 13 years old just gives me so much hope. And I love that they feel like they are living in a world, even though we see this horrible side, and I know they know what's happening, but that they are still choosing to be little Kai and not let anyone tell them not to be who they are is just, it's awesome. So that's what's giving me hope.
Thank you. Thank you for each of our panelists for sharing. And I think Bishop Rawls' goal this month is to make me cry publicly. I think but we we have been doing that to each other lately. I want you to know that we have more events coming up in this series. We have more information at the table. Next week, we have a virtual panel of panelists across the Americas talking about the next 250 years of this country and where we're headed. And I want you to know that I have hope that we are building something that will not be crushed, that our love and our community, that we're at an inflection point, right? Nothing is guaranteed. But I believe we are building a movement, a love, a faith, a community that will make this era the dying breath of white Christian nationalism and its assault on our freedoms and on our people. And I think we have to hold on to that hope. In this moment, when we get stuck on the back foot, we can get defensive and it can limit our political, spiritual vision and imagination, right? We can start going, well, maybe if we can just get the bathroom ban done and then we'll be good. We start limiting what we think is possible when it comes to health care, when it comes to housing, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to our freedom and our families, we get defensive. And I want you to know that those things that you've been dreaming about, those dreams you've kept quiet, they're possible, they're doable in our lifetimes, and we've just got to keep moving in love, in community, and being audacious enough to claim what is rightfully ours. And so thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you for being part of this. Please grab some extra popcorn and water on your way out. We'll be around for a while. We hope to see you at our future events. And again, also, if you'd like to learn more about St. Luke's, you've got Pastor Clifford Matthews over there. You've got Minister Terrence here and maybe some other members in the hall. We're just so grateful for each of you and thankful for all you're doing. Have a good night.